Sawadee Kap, hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha. We're in volume 13 of our book series. We're studying chapters 61 through 70 today. And we're going to actually be restarting this program from the very beginning on the 10th of January. So you don't have to start at the beginning of the program, but we're actually going to be restarting it from the very beginning on the 10th of January. So anybody who's interested in doing that, you'll be able to restart from the very beginning of this program. The way this program works is I share the words of the Buddha through our book series, and I invite students who are in Zoom to be able to read one of the chapters or multiple of the chapters, depending on how many you'd like to volunteer for. And then after someone reads a chapter, I'm going to share some teachings on that, and then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you might have. Whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section. And then if you're in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically in order to volunteer to read or to ask questions just by unmuting your microphone. So welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. If you haven't studied these chapters, that's okay. You can actually study along with us today, because after someone reads it, like I mentioned, I'll share some teachings on that. But what you'll notice is that in these chapters that there's the words of the Buddha. Then you've got a reference that takes you back to the original source teachings. You can see in the Pali Canon where this comes from. And then you've got words from me helping you understand how to implement this into your day-to-day life. So you can actually get these books from our website by downloading them from buddhadailywisdom.com, clicking on free books, and you'll be able to see all the books there. I recommend for students to actually start with the first book, which is volume 1. Today, we're in volume 13. So again, if you're just joining for the first time, it's okay. You'll be able to learn plenty today, but you would probably be wise to go ahead and start with volume 1 and work your way through from there. So it looks like Pat is volunteering to read for this first chapter. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Persons who are worthy of gifts. Fifth discourse. Monks. Possessing 6 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, and unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What's 6? The faculty of confidence, the faculty of energy, the faculty of mindfulness, the faculty of concentration, the faculty of wisdom, and with the destruction of the taints, he has realized for himself with direct knowledge, experience in this very life, the taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, and having entered upon it, he resides in it. Possessing these 6 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, and unsurpassed field of merit for the world. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. So this is a whole series of discourses. This is the 5th one, but there's a whole bunch of them here where the Buddha is helping you to be able to understand how to practice generosity in order to produce merit. Merit is where you've practiced generosity in order to help other people get access to the teachings. In order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to practice generosity in multiple different ways with the people that are close to you, with maybe your coworkers or neighbors, with people you don't even know. That's generosity, and that's surely helping you to train your mind to let go, because that's the underlying problem that the Buddha discovered, is that the mind is holding on and craving permanence, and you need to train your mind to let go. As you're experiencing more and more improvement to the condition of the mind in your life, you might decide you would like to make offerings in order to help the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha so that other people can get access to them. This is what would be called merit, that you're making generous offerings of your time, effort, energy, or resources in order to be able to help other people get access to the teachings of the Buddha. Because people learning and growing and developing on this path is the very best thing for them, for the people close to them, and all of humanity, because an individual is becoming more peaceful, more kind, more loving, more gentle, and that is wonderful for them, for the people around them, and all of humanity. So as you're noticing that these teachings are absolutely helping you, because that's what you'll actually notice, you might decide that you would like to make offerings to people. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, he had certain people that were really close to him that were learning and practicing the teachings very closely. But then, of course, on the outer edges, there were people who weren't practicing the teachings very closely. And he was still teaching those people, but he was giving guidance to individuals to understand who to make offerings to in order to ensure the continuation of the teachings. And there's been multiple discourses here where he's been sharing that. And this is just one discourse of many that he's been sharing. So here he's actually talking about an enlightened being, making offerings to an enlightened being. But it's important that you don't look at these teachings in isolation, that you look at them in totality, because he also talks about making offerings to people who are on their way to the first stage of enlightenment or in the first stage of enlightenment and beyond from there. So he talks about making offerings to many different groups of people. This is just one particular discourse. And he's talking about these 6 qualities here. He's talking about this faculty of confidence. Someone who has confidence, they have confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, their teacher, and their own ability to get to enlightenment. This is someone who's eliminated doubt. When you have doubt in the mind, this will hinder you from getting to enlightenment because an individual is doubting whether these teachings even work or not. But someone who's actually gotten to enlightenment, and even in the first stage of enlightenment, they will have no doubt about the Buddha, the teachings, the community, their teacher, and their own ability to get to enlightenment because they've seen significant progress to the condition of their mind in their life. So an individual who has confidence in these teachings and confidence in all these 5 things, that means that they're well on their way to progressing to enlightenment, or in this case, the Buddha is actually describing an enlightened being. So this is a quality that you can look for in an individual who has confidence in the teachings. If somebody is like really kind of lackadaisical about the teachings and aren't really sure, what the teachings are and whether or not they work, that means that they haven't practiced the teachings very closely. So that individual wouldn't necessarily be able to help other people to gain access to the teachings and learn them to be able to get to enlightenment. So if you're interested in making offerings to be able to see the teachings of the Buddha continue in the world, you would like to make offerings to someone who has confidence in his teachings. And the way that they get that confidence is through investigation and examination of the teachings. When you investigate and examine them close enough and you implement them into your day-to-day life, you will see that they actually work. And that's how you eliminate your doubt. You don't eliminate doubt through blind belief, but having investigated and examined, reflected to independently verify and practice the teachings, you'll be able to see the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life, and there'll be this confidence in the teachings. And you'll be able to see that in an individual that you might decide to support. And that's why the Buddha is giving that as one quality to look for in an individual that you would like to support to see the teachings continue in the world. When he's talking about this energy here, what he's talking about is the enlightenment factor of energy. This is where an individual has vigor or vitality, ambition, enthusiasm, motivation, that they show initiative and a willingness to do something. Where when the unenlightened mind has craving, desire, attachment, the mind will chase and chase and chase. It'll long and yearn, but eventually that craving will burn out and the mind will swing all the way to the other side, where it's dull and lethargic and complacent, or we might even say lazy, right? The mind will kind of swing back and forth like this. But if an individual is practicing the enlightenment factor of energy, you will see ambition and enthusiasm. You will see initiative, a willingness to do something in order to be able to share the teachings of the Buddha, but also in their own life to be able to build up their own life, right? So you would like to look for this enlightenment factor of energy where someone's not just chasing, and then when they're not doing that, the mind swings all the way to the other side where it's dull and lethargic or lazy or complacent. Because this individual hasn't practiced the teachings very closely, that's why their mind's doing that. So the Buddha is teaching you to look for someone who's practicing the middle way with this enlightenment factor of energy, where that they have vitality and vigor, initiative, ambition, and enthusiasm to work towards certain goals and objectives. Then he talks about mindfulness. Mindfulness is that awareness of mind. You guys are familiar with that if you've been studying with me. Anybody who's learned the Eightfold Path, which is the first beginning teaching that you're really learning and really focusing on with the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, you're developing your mindfulness through meditation and practicing that in day-to-day life, where you're aware of your thoughts and your ideas, anything that's going through your mind, any kind of feelings that you're experiencing, where oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we lack mindfulness. We don't have awareness of what's going on within our own mind. So we just kind of like trumble through life without being aware of our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts, our ideas. But for someone who's practiced well and trained their mind, they're going to have well-developed mindfulness or awareness of mind, because you're going to need that in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. So here, ultimately, the Buddha describing an enlightened being, he's describing someone who has mindfulness or awareness of mind. More specifically, it's the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that you're aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. By the time you get to enlightenment, those things are actually eliminated. You don't have that coming up in your mind anymore, but you will still have mindfulness or awareness of mind. Oftentimes people use this word mindfulness in a way that the Buddha didn't use it. And if they'd like to use it in other ways, that's fine. That's up to them. But the way that the Buddha used it is as awareness of mind, and more specifically, the four foundations of mindfulness. But sometimes what people use it as is a replacement for the word careful. They might say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? Well, that's not what the Buddha is talking about. That's just, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? He's talking about having awareness of mind and awareness of those four foundations of bodily sensations. That's the early warning system, alerting you that you're about to become discontent. The feelings themselves, pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. The condition of the mind. This is like for multiple minutes or hours or days, the mind's experienced a certain condition, like grumpiness or irritability or what have you. And then the mental objects are the 10 fetters themselves. Those are deeply rooted containers in the mind that an individual would have needed to have awareness of in order to purify their mind of those 10 fetters. So an individual who's actually enlightened will have well-developed mindfulness. They'll be aware of their mind at all times. Then there's concentration. Concentration is focus and clarity of mind, that the individual has that deep honed mind where they're focused and concentrated in all parts of their life. They're practicing singleness of mind. And this would be developed as part of their journey to enlightenment as well. Not just in meditation are you developing your concentration, but in your day-to-day life, you'd like to be doing just one thing at a time. And anytime you see your mind moving off of that single object or that singleness of mind, you'd like to cut that off, cut it off, cut it off, cut it off, and bring the mind back to whatever it is that you're focusing on. Because more and more, you'll be able to train your mind to be refined in the middle. This is where I talk about the piece of wood and the steel rod grinding back and forth. Initially, it's going to bounce around a lot because there's not a groove there. But over time, you're going to get that groove going. And when the steel rod pops out, you'll notice that and you'll be able to bring it right back to the groove. But eventually, if you get a groove going long enough, you'll actually see that the mind will never pop out of that. So someone who's actually enlightened, their mind's going to always be focused and concentrated, and you'll be able to see that in interacting with them. There's this faculty of wisdom that an enlightened being is going to have. This is the deep wisdom of the natural laws. They're going to understand the teachings inside and out, backwards and forwards, up, down, left, right. They're going to be able to talk about them with ease. It's kind of like what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is upgrading the operating system of your mind. You can think about the unenlightened mind running this old archaic operating system, unenlightened 1.0. And boy, is it cumbersome to walk with that type of software loaded up in your mind. But through these incremental upgrades of software, you ultimately get to this enlightened 9.0 software in your mind. And now you're operating through that software effortlessly. And of course, on your way to that, it was a little bit challenging to keep upgrading your software. You kind of stumble over your feet. You're kind of looking for the icons. Where did they put that setting? Where is that? You're having challenges to be able to understand this new operating system. But once you get up and running on that new operating system, it's like, wow, this works so much better. This is effortless. And that's what it's like when you're upgrading your mind with this wisdom, that you're upgrading your operating system. And it's a little bit challenging as you're making your way towards that. But once you get up and running on this new operating system, it's effortless to be able to function through that wisdom. And you'll be able to see an enlightened being is not just understanding the teachings intellectually, but they're actually practicing the teachings. That's what it means to have wisdom. You can't actually get to wisdom through just intellectual understanding. The way that you can think about this is when we were growing up as children, we might have been taught that it's unwise to use drugs and alcohol. And we understood that intellectually. And we might have even reflected on this and being able to see the truth for ourselves, that people go to jail, people get in car accidents, people lose their money and their wealth, all kinds of difficulties from being addicted to substances. But we still did it. We still chose to do it because we had that ignorance or that unknowing of true reality in our mind. We weren't functioning through wisdom. So we can understand something intellectually, but if we're not actually practicing it, we don't have the wisdom. So you would see an individual who's enlightened that they don't just intellectually understand the teachings, but they're actually practicing them on a day-to-day basis as well. And that's what it means to have wisdom and have fully eradicated the fetter of ignorance or unknowing of true reality. And then lastly, the Buddha talks about this destruction of the taints. What this is the pollutions of mind, the 10 fetters. And if somebody's destroyed the taints or eradicated the taints or uprooted the taints, this is the pollutions or the fetters, those 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered. And this individual would be enlightened because they no longer have these pollutions in the mind. And the Buddha goes on and describes this further. He says, having realized for himself with direct knowledge or experience, right? Because you're not believing these teachings, you're learning, examining, and investigating. You're reflecting on them to independently verify them. And then you're practicing them, integrating them into your day-to-day life to be able to see the truth for yourself. And that's your direct knowledge or experience. And then this is happening in this very life, right? This is the actual life where you're making your way towards enlightenment. Then there's this taintless liberation of mind. Taintless means that the mind is purified. There's no more pollution in the mind. The mind's liberated. It's free. Because when the mind's experiencing stress and anxiety and guilt and shame and fear and all these other feelings, the mind's not free. It's not liberated. It's all bound up because it's got these taints or these pollutions. But a taintless mind has been liberated. It's free. And the way that an individual has gotten there is it's liberated by wisdom, because you need to understand, what are those 10 fetters? How do I know what they are and that they're arising? And how do I actually eliminate them? And how do I know that I've actually eliminated them? So there's a certain amount of wisdom that you cultivate. Again, not just intellectual learning, because that's part of it. You need to be able to do that, but you need to move it into reflection to verify it. And then you need to practice it. And that's where the real wisdom is cultivated, is through the practice. And now, having done that, an individual will have entered upon it, meaning enlightenment, and now the mind resides in it. The mind is actually residing in this enlightened mental state. It's a permanent mental state. Once you get into the enlightened mental state, your mind will never regress. So the Buddha is saying that this is the type of individual that you would like to actually make offerings to. And he's decided in being here. But this isn't the only type of individual in terms of sharing the teachings and getting the teachings into the world for other people to get access to them. This is just one discourse of many. That's why I encourage you to never look at the teachings of the Buddha in isolation, because if you just saw this particular discourse, you would think like this is the only type of person to make offerings to, where that's not actually true. This is just one particular aspect of this practice of generosity that he's talking about. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So I'm going to move on to the next chapter, which is chapter 62. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Samantha, go ahead, ma'am. Just have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. I think my internet keeps coming and going. If you lose me, then sorry.
Okay.
Persons who are worthy of gifts, sixth discourse. So too, Badali, when a monk possesses 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What are the 10? Here, Badali, a monk possesses the right view of one beyond training, the right intention of one beyond training, the right speech of one beyond training, the right action of one beyond training, the right livelihood of one beyond training, the right effort of one beyond training, the right mindfulness of one beyond training, the right concentration of one beyond training, the right wisdom of one beyond training, and the right liberation of one beyond training. When a monk possesses these 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So here again, the Buddha is describing an enlightened being, but he's describing it in a different way. He's describing it through the tenfold path. Most people are familiar with the Eightfold Path, or at least that phrase, right? The Eightfold Path itself is the core central teaching of the Buddha that an individual would need to know inside and out, backwards and forwards, up, down, left, right. This is the path to enlightenment. And you would like to study that with the original words of the Buddha, because there's plenty of resources out there that claim that what they're sharing is the Eightfold Path. But when you look at them, they're usually not based in the original words of the Buddha, and they can be very misleading. But if you learn with the original words of the Buddha, you can see exactly what he teach and what he didn't teach on this important topic of the Eightfold Path. And once you understand that, then you can make your way towards enlightenment through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So the Eightfold Path is the path to enlightenment. And as you're practicing the Eightfold Path and you actually fully cultivate the mind and fully purify it, you'll eventually get to the point where the mind is enlightened. And at that point, you will be practicing the Tenfold Path. The Tenfold Path has 2 extra steps. There's this right wisdom and right liberation. Now, the Eightfold Path, the words of the Buddha explain explicitly what those things are because there's specific teachings that you need to practice and you need to be able to implement in your day-to-day life in order to be able to purify your mind and make your way to enlightenment. But what right wisdom and right liberation is this is kind of like a byproduct of having practiced the Eightfold Path in its entirety to perfection. That what you're doing is you're gradually bringing up your practice with the Eightfold Path, tweaking that on a day-to-day basis. For multiple years, you're bringing your practice up to the Eightfold Path. Then you live your life like that, with that Eightfold Path being practiced to perfection for multiple years. And as you do, this is what's purifying your mind. And then you will eventually experience right wisdom and right liberation. The understanding of what right wisdom is that you'll have deep wisdom about the path to enlightenment. You will no longer have any ignorance about how the mind functions, about the natural laws of existence, about how to actually get to enlightenment. You will never forget the wisdom that it took for you to be able to make your way to enlightenment. It will be deeply rooted in the mind. That's that new operating system that you've been upgraded to, that you decided that this is what you would like to do, and you've gradually trained your mind to get to that point, and you've been living your life through this for so many years. It's just like second nature to you. Again, making that climb up to the Eightfold Path can be challenging, but then as you're living your life with the Eightfold Path for an extended period of time, that's what's actually helping you to gain more and more wisdom and actually purify the mind. So right wisdom is the culmination of having practiced the Eightfold Path to perfection. You now have deep wisdom about the path to enlightenment, and you've been practicing it perfectly for an extended period of time. And having done so, you would have purified the mind, and now you're experiencing right liberation. This is where the mind no longer experiences any discontent feelings. There would be no anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All those feelings and others are completely eliminated through uprooting the causes and conditions that are producing them. So this individual wouldn't even have the slightest ickiness in their mind for multiple years. You will notice 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, your mind is completely liberated, meaning it's free. Now, when you know that your mind is enlightened, I don't suggest you ever convince yourself that the mind is enlightened, because if you ever convince yourself that the mind is enlightened, there's a potential that your conceit or your arrogance or your pride or your boastfulness can arise. And if that arises, your mind's not enlightened. There's still conceit in the mind. So you'd like to always remain humble and down to earth. So if you never convince yourself that you're actually enlightened, you can just grow and develop in life for the rest of your life. Because getting to enlightenment, while that's a very major step forward and you've put a lot of effort into being able to get to enlightenment, your mind is now completely honed, that you've actually are now, your mind's performing optimally. If there's anything that you always have been interested to do in this life and you've just never done it, like maybe learning how to fly an airplane or something like that, or flying a helicopter, well, by the time your mind is fully refined and you're actually experiencing right liberation, perhaps you'd like to go do that. You'd like to go fly a helicopter or something like that. And now you're actually capable of doing that because your mind's performing optimally. So there's plenty of wisdom to learn and understand about this world beyond the path to enlightenment. It's just that the path to enlightenment is what's going to help you to be able to hone your mind so that you can now enjoy this life through this fully liberated mind. So right wisdom and right liberation is what's being practiced and is a byproduct of having practiced the Eightfold Path really closely. So if you're seeing an individual that deeply understands the Eightfold Path and has deep wisdom about that, inside and out, backwards and forwards, then they are potentially practicing right wisdom. And if you can see that their mind is never frustrated, irritated, even the slightest bit annoyed, then you know that their mind is actually liberated. And the Buddha is saying this is the type of individual that you'd like to actually support, because this type of individual has the ability to then share the teachings with others to be able to help them understand how to get to enlightenment as well. So he's describing an enlightened being here in a slightly different way through the tenfold path. So depending on what teachings you understand, you can look at this person's practice with discernment, not with judgment, not looking down on them, but with discernment and making the decision of whether or not you'd like to support this individual to be able to share the teachings with others. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So now we'll go to chapter 63. This is another discourse talking about this in a different way. It looks like Pat would like to read that one. Go ahead, sir.
Persons who are worthy of gifts, seventh discourse. So too, possessing four factors, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, and unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What for? Here, a monk is skilled in places, a long-distance shooter, a sharpshooter, and one who splits a great body. 1. And how, monks, is a monk skilled in places? Here a monk is virtuous, practicing moral conduct. He resides restrained by the training guidelines, possessed of wholesome conduct and wise decision-making, seeing danger in the slightest faults. Having undertaken the training guidelines, he trains in them. It is in this way that a monk is skilled in places. 2. And how is a monk a long-distance shooter? Here, any kind of form whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a monk sees all form as it really is with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. Any kind of feeling whatsoever, any kind of perception whatsoever, any kind of volitional formations whatsoever, any kind of consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, a monk sees all consciousness as it really is with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine. This is not myself. It is in this way that a monk is a long-distance shooter. 3. And how is a monk a sharpshooter? Here, a monk just understands as it really is. This is discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the cause of discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the elimination of discontentedness. He understands as it really is. This is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. It is in this way that a monk is a sharpshooter. 4. And how is a monk one who splits a great body? Here, a monk splits the great mass of ignorance, unknowing of true reality. It is in this way that a monk is one who splits a great body. Possessing these four qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, and unsurpassed field of merit for the world. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So here are four things that the Buddha is describing that an individual would be wise to practice in order to make their way towards enlightenment. But then as an individual is interested in practicing generosity to see the teachings continue in the world, then they would be interested in looking for an individual that has these types of qualities. Again, this is just another way to look at an individual's practice to determine whether or not you'd be interested in supporting that individual. And the Buddha is using an analogy here of this shooter, right? Because these are things that people would have understood at the time. So the first one, he's talking about skilled in places. He's talking about an individual who's virtuous, practicing good, wholesome moral conduct. You would see that they're not causing harm through their speech, their actions, or their livelihood, right? Those are moral conduct that you could actually cause harm to others, and harm's going to come back to you. But if you understand the natural law of karma in the Eightfold Path, you would be practicing wholesome moral conduct, not just understanding it intellectually, but actually practicing it. And then an individual resides restrained by the training guidelines. This is where the mind is practicing mindfulness or awareness of mind, applying right effort to restrain the mind and cut that off and let it go. And there's this wholesome conduct and wise decision making, Because an individual is going to understand the natural law of karma, they're going to see danger in the slightest missteps of not practicing based on this natural law, because they would have seen it so clearly by the time they get to enlightenment. So this is kind of one aspect of these 4 qualities that the Buddha is suggesting that you look for. This long distance shooter that he's talking about, he's actually talking about someone who has realized non-self, that they understand that none of these things are who you are as a person, that it's not your physical form, your feelings, your perceptions, your volitional formations, which are choices and decisions, nor your consciousness that makes up who you are as a person. These are the 5 aggregates. This is something that I taught way back in volume 2, and we've kind of touched on it in a couple different times along our program here, where you need to make sure you don't identify with this self-image as who you are as a person, that you don't identify with the feelings like I am angry, I am frustrated. It's not actually true because there's no I here. What's actually true is the mind is experiencing frustration or the mind is experiencing anger, but that doesn't define you as a person. And then your perceptions are your views and opinions about the world. If you cling to those, thinking that that's who you are, now your mind's going to experience discontentedness as a result. Like maybe someone thinks I am a Democrat or I am a Republican or any other political parties that exist throughout the world, or I am a certain nationality, or I am this sexual orientation, or I am this job or occupation. This is an individual having a certain perception of who they think they are as a person, right? So you need to let go of any kind of perception of who you think you are and your views and opinions about the world. Or your volitional formations, any kind of choices or decisions. If we made choices and decisions in the past to use drugs and alcohol, if our mind adopts the identity of I am an alcoholic or I am an addict, well, this is the mind having personal existence view. And now you could feel guilty or shameful because of this. But it's important to make sure that you don't identify with your choices and decisions as who you are as a person. Sure, you might have chosen to use drugs and alcohol in the past. Those were decisions that this being chose to make, but that doesn't define who you are today as a person. So you can eliminate that idea of I am an alcoholic or I am a addict or any of those kinds of things. And then the same thing with the consciousness itself. This is where the mind can cling to any number of things about your identity, your self-identity. So the Buddha is saying here that an individual would not see any of these things as who you are as a person. That will be someone who's eliminated personal existence view. Then down here, he's talking about someone who's established right view, where they understand the Four Noble Truths. This is discontentedness, the cause, the elimination, and the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. If you've been studying with me for any amount of time, you know these things because you've trained in them through the Four Noble Truths, and you understand what each one of these are. But if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me, and I will help you with these. And then ultimately, an individual is splitting this great body, right? They're splitting through this ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. You understand that that's the number one problem that the Buddha discovered in the mind, that the mind just lacks wisdom. And that's what's allowing craving and anger to continue to exist in the mind. You learn this through the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots, but you also learn this through dependent origination too. That ignorance is that top level problem. And then there's this cascading effect of multiple things. So an individual who is worthy of offerings would have penetrated through this, would have split through this, through the cultivation of wisdom. And through developing wisdom, they will be eliminating all their ignorance. And that's what the Buddha is saying is an individual you would like to actually be able to support if you're going to choose to actually support someone on the path to enlightenment and help that individual to then share the teachings with others. So let me know what questions you guys have here on chapter 63. All right, I don't see any questions. So I'm going to move to chapter 64. This is another discourse. Would someone like to read this one? All right, Samantha.
Persons who are worthy of gifts, 8th discourse. So too monks possessing 5 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 5? Here a monk is one who listens, who destroys, who guards, who patiently endures, and who goes. 1. And how is a monk one who listens? Here, when the teachings and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata are being taught, a monk heeds it, attends to it, directs his whole mind to it, and listens to the teachings with enthusiastic ears. It is in this way that a monk is one who listens. 2. And how is a monk one who destroys? Here, a monk does not tolerate an arisen sensual thought, but abandons it, dispels it, terminates it, and obliterates it. He does not tolerate an arisen thought of ill will, an arisen thought of harming, any other evil, unwholesome states that arise from time to time, but abandons them, dispels them, terminates them, and obliterates them. It is in this way that a monk is one who destroys. 3. And how is a monk one who guards? Here, having seen a form with the eye, a monk does not grasp its marks and features, since if he left the eye sense base unrestrained, evil, unwholesome states of craving and aversion might invade him. He practices restraint over it. He guards the eye sense base. He undertakes the restraint of the eye sense base. Having heard a sound with the ear, having smelled an odor with the nose, having tasted a flavor with the tongue, having touched a physical object with the body, having recognized a mental object with the body, he guards the mind sense base. He undertakes the restraint of the mind sense base. It is in this way that a monk is one who guards. 4. And how is a monk one who patiently endures? Here a monk patiently endures cold and heat, hunger and thirst, contact with flies, mosquitoes, wind, the burning sun, and serpents, rude and offensive ways of speech. He is able to remain content with arisen bodily feelings that are painful, agonizing, sharp, piercing, distressing, disagreeable, weakening one's vitality. It is in this way that a monk is one who patiently endures. 5. And how is a monk one who goes? Here a monk is one who easily goes to that region where he has never been gone in this long time. That is, to the stilling of all activities, the letting go of all material possessions, the destruction of craving, freedom from strong feelings, elimination, nibbana. It is in this way that a monk is one who goes. Possessing these 5 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
All right. Thank you, Samantha. So once again, we have another way of looking at this with 5 different things that the Buddha is talking about that would be wise to be able to support this type of individual. So this first one, he's saying one who listens, right? When the teachings and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata are being taught, this individual heeds it, attends to it, directs their whole mind to understand it. They listen to it, and they have enthusiastic or eager ears. Because if you've seen enough of your progress in your day-to-day life through the teachings of the Buddha, when the teachings of the Buddha are being taught, you would be kind of like on the edge of your seat, eagerly listening to what it is that the teachings of the Buddha are, because you will have seen that, gosh, there's been all this progress, and now let me learn some more here and try to understand some more so I can create some more progress in my life. So you would see somebody isn't just taking a lackadaisical approach to understanding the teachings, but this is an individual who's eagerly listening to the teachings. And you would know that that's the type of individual that you might be interested to support. Then he talks about one who destroys. What he's talking about here is an individual who cuts off and lets go of a sensual thought, a thought of ill will, or a thought of harming. This is part of right intention from the Eightfold Path. That if an individual just allows that sensual thought or ill will or harming to reside in the mind is staying wired that way, to think that way, and the individual is complacent. This is what the Buddha describes when he talks about complacency. He talks about that if an unwholesome thought arises in the mind and you do nothing about it, then the mind's complacent. So if you saw someone who was complacent in their practice and just allowing sensual thoughts and ill will and harming coming into the mind, and they don't really do anything about it, they're even vocalizing or even acting upon those thoughts, then you know that this individual isn't closely practicing the teachings, and it wouldn't be wise for you to actually support this type of individual. So the Buddha is teaching to look for individuals who are eliminating this from the mind. You don't see them allowing those thoughts to exist in the mind. Then he talks about one who guards. This is guarding the mind. Whenever he talks about guarding the mind, he's talking about mindfulness or awareness of mind. That if you're aware of sensual desire, and you know that it's sensual desire, that the mind's longing, yearning through the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself, well, you would like to have mindfulness and have a guard there, that whenever you see the mind pulling in the direction of the objects of its affection, you're yanking it back, right? That's what you would like to do as part of the path. So if you see a teacher or an ordained practitioner who's doing this, where their mind is able to pull back, right? They're not unrestrained, they're actually restraining their mind, then you know that they're guarding the mind. And this is an individual that you might consider to support. Then he talks about this patiently enduring things. This is all impermanence that he's talking about here. Someone who can be patient and understanding of cold versus heat, right? If someone's complaining like, oh gosh, it's so cold out here, I can't stand this, I hate it when it's this cold, right? This is not someone who's patiently enduring the cold. Or gosh, it's so hot, I'm sweating, it feels miserable out here, right? I need to get into the air conditioning, right? And someone kind of complaining and agitated. That's not patiently enduring the cold and the heat. And all this is impermanence, that the body's not going to be permanently comfortable and there's going to be cold and heat. So you need to be able to look at that. And then the same thing with hunger and thirst. Someone's like, oh my gosh, I am so hungry, I'm going to eat a horse if you don't get out of my way. Like someone angry and frustrated about hunger or thirst, or, maybe they're agitated about flies or mosquitoes, or the Buddha's even talking about the wind here, right? Like maybe there's like a strong wind or the hot sun or any kind of things like serpents or things like this, or even someone who has rude or offensive speech towards someone, that if someone's patiently enduring these things, they would actually understand. They wouldn't be pleased or happy or joyful just because someone is offensively talking to them, but they're not going to be angry and bitter and harsh and hostile either, because they understand that even as an enlightened being, there's going to be some people who talk to you in polite, kind, friendly, respectful ways, but there's going to be some people who are rude and disrespectful. It's normal, right? That this is going to happen. Now, by the time you get to enlightenment, I'd say 99.9999% of the people around you are actually going to be speaking in polite, kind, friendly, respectful ways. But you're going to have occasional people who aren't doing that, even as an enlightened being. Even the Buddha experienced this. But if you're grumpy and irritable and frustrated because of that, that means the mind is not patiently enduring this impermanence that it's experiencing. It's still craving permanence. So you'd like to look for people who are able to patiently endure this. And then he says he is able to remain content with arisen bodily feelings that are painful, agonizing, sharp, piercing, distressing, disagreeable, weakening one's vitality, right? So like say someone stumped their toe, right? Or they hit their hand with a hammer or something like this, or any of these kinds of things. If they experience this painful experience with the physical body, if their mind is well trained, they'll be able to reside content and peaceful, even in those situations. So these are some indications of what you can look for in an individual who has a well-trained mind, and thus you might be interested to support in order to have the teachings be shared in the world. So then the Buddha is talking about this last one here, where he's saying this individual was easily able to go to these different regions where they've never gone before, to stilling all activities, the letting go of all material possessions, the destruction of craving, and freedom from strong feelings, elimination, and ultimately enlightened. Now, these things that the Buddha is talking about is for someone who's willing to share the teachings and you are interested in supporting that person. Well, this individual should be willing to travel to anywhere to share the teachings, right? They're not going to just pick and choose, like I only want to go to the Bahamas, or I only want to go to that nice mountain location. An individual whose mind is liberated and that they're actually interested in seeing other people get access to the teachings, they'd be willing to go anywhere, even if they've never gone to those places before, in order to be able to share the teachings with others. So that's something that you would like to look for in an individual who's going to be sharing the teachings, because in order to really get the teachings out into the world, they're going to have to go places where the teachings don't actually exist. And that's going to help bring the teachings into that community, that those people in the community are pulling the teachings in and they're inviting this teacher. Well, if this teacher is like, nah, I don't want to go there. I really don't like being in northern Canada when it's super cold, or, I don't want to go over here when it's super hot, or I only want to go to these places or that places. This individual's mind isn't liberated, and they're not really capable of sharing the teachings in places where they're otherwise don't exist, and these teachings need to be taught. So that's one aspect. Then he talks about the stilling of all activities. What he's talking about here is that the mind isn't overactive and just rambling, blah, 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 that the mind is still and quieted. Then when he's talking about letting go of all material possessions, he's not talking about necessarily the physical letting go of material possessions, but he's talking about mentally, that you won't see this person holding on to material possessions and clinging to them, of mine, that they're willing to share their material possessions with the people around them, right? This is what it means to let go of all material possessions. Oftentimes when people see this, they think like, you would just be sitting in kind of like a dark forest naked with nothing whatsoever. That's not what the Buddha is talking about. He's talking about mentally letting go of material possessions. You're going to need clothes and, food and shelter and medical care. You're going to nowadays need electronic devices, but you can train your mind to not be attached to those things and not crave permanence. And that's why the Buddha talks here next about the destruction of craving, right? That you eliminate that craving for permanence. And because of that, the individual's mind is going to have eliminated the strong feelings, and the mind's actually enlightened, right? So that's what the Buddha is talking about here, is once again another way of talking about an enlightened being with these 5 qualities that you might decide to look for in someone to make generous offerings to, that's going to be able to share the teachings with others. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Okay, I don't see any questions. So let's go to the next one. This is chapter 66. Looks like Pat's going to read that one. Go ahead, sir.
Persons who are worthy of gifts. 9th discourse. So too, monks. Possessing 4 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What for? Virtue, practicing moral conduct, speed, patience, and gentleness. Possessing these 4 factors, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So here, these are 4 qualities that the Buddha is just kind of penetrating into. And as you guys know, when you're reading like this, if you're curious about what these types of things are, all you need to do is scroll down to where I'm actually teaching these to be able to help you understand what these are. Well, the virtuous behavior, you guys have learned that all throughout the various programs that I share. This is from the Eightfold Path, that you would see somebody practicing good, wholesome moral conduct, right? That they would be practicing right speech, right action, right livelihood. They would be practicing the 5 precepts and things like this. That's one quality that you would like to look for in someone that you're potentially going to make offerings to. This speed, this is related to the enlightenment factor of energy, that an individual is going to have that effort, determination, ambition, initiative, and that vigor and enthusiasm and willingness to do something. So an enlightened being isn't actually going to be doing things quickly, right? That's not what he's talking about when he's talking about speed. He's talking about this vitality, this vigor, this initiative, this willingness to do something, this vitality or vigor that's in the mind. That's what he's actually talking about. But an individual will still do that in a methodical way. They'll pay careful attention to whatever decisions that they're making. So that's what he's talking about there with speed. Then when he's talking about patience, he's talking about not having a restless mind. This is the 9th fetter, the 9th pollution, where you can eliminate your central desire, but you might notice that the mind's still a little bit overactive inside the mind. It's not maybe outwardly noticeable to anybody, but inside the mind, there's still some restlessness. And an individual who's practicing patience wouldn't have that restlessness. They would also be practicing equanimity, where their mind is calm and composed, having evenness of temper, especially in difficult situations. This would be that patience, because the thing that causes someone to be impatient is their craving, desire, attachment. If your mind's longing, yearning, and chasing, you're never content in the present moment, and your mind's chasing the very next thing. So the mind's going to have impatience. So you would like to cultivate more and more patience, because that's what's going to help you get to enlightenment. But if you're going to be guided to enlightenment by someone who is close to enlightenment or either enlightened, you would see that they're patient, that they don't have a restless mind, and that they're practicing equanimity. So these are two qualities that you would like to look for. And then you'll notice that they have this gentleness, that there's this quality of being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to all beings. You'll see this warmth about the way that they interact with people. They're not going to be cold and abrupt and things of this nature. So these are 4 qualities here that the Buddha is talking about in this particular discourse. And in this next discourse, he's actually explaining something very similar. This is chapter 66. Sorry, that last one was 65. This next one, he's actually describing the same 4 qualities, but then he's adding this mildness in here. So I don't know that we need to read this one. I'll just add this mildness so you can see what the Buddha is teaching here. This is actually the tranquility of the mind, that the mind doesn't have this intensity and aggression, that there's the stability and peacefulness and stillness of the mind. So these are 2 discourses that are very similar, but in this one, in chapter 66, he's adding this mildness here. So does anybody have any questions on either 65 or 66, which are actually both very similar? Okay, I don't see any questions. So now we'll go to chapter 67. This is another discourse that is on the same topic. Anybody would like to read this one? Okay, go ahead, Samantha.
Persons who are worthy of gifts, 11th discourse. So too monks possessing 8 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 8? 1. Here a monk is virtuous. He resides unrestrained by the training guidelines, possessed of wholesome conduct and wise decision-making, seeing danger in the slightest faults. Having undertaken the training guidelines, he trains in them. 2. He respectfully eats whatever food they give him, whether rough or excellent, without being annoyed. 3. He is disinterested in bodily, verbal, and mental misconduct. He is disinterested in the acquisition of the numerous kinds of evil, unwholesome qualities. 4. He is gentle and pleasant to live with, and he does not attempt to agitate other monks. 5. He reveals his tricks, ploys, schemes, and ruses as they really are to the teacher or to his wise fellow monks, so that they can make an effort to stamp them out of him. 6. He is one who takes up the training, determined, whether or not other monks train, I will train. 7. When moving, he moves only along a straight path. In this connection, this is the straight path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. 8. He has aroused energy thus. Willingly let only my skin, sinews, and bones remain, and let the flesh and blood dry up in this body. But I will not relax the energy so long as I have not attained what can be attained by strength, energy, and effort. Possessing these 8 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
All right. Thank you, Samantha. So here's 8 more qualities that you can look at an individual through each of these different things independently, right? Again, you're not judging people. You're just using discernment because you've worked hard for your time, effort, energy, and resources to be able to share that with other people. You like to make sure that it's going to be beneficial. So the first one, we've talked about before, where the mind is restrained by the training guidelines, practicing this good, wholesome moral conduct. You guys understand that one? That individual who's going to go out and share the teachings with others, they're going to be supported by the people as they're sharing the teachings, and they're going to be offered food, and they should be willing to eat whatever food is offered to them. Because if the mind has sensual desire, you're going to have certain foods that you like and certain foods that you dislike. And you're going to want to push these foods away that you dislike. That's what the mind does when it has sensual desire. But you need to overcome that in order to get to enlightenment, where you can just see food as something that nourishes the body. And an individual who would be able to go out and share the teachings with others would be able to eat whatever food is given to them, as long as it's not going to cause any allergic reactions or medical conditions or things like this, that they'd be able to eat those, that it's not central desire that's causing them to make the decisions of what to eat or what not to eat. But instead, they're making the decision to eat any and all food, unless it is that they truly have a medical condition that inhibits them from eating a particular food. Then this individual would be disinterested in bodily, verbal, and mental misconduct, that they're not practicing unwholesome qualities. You would be able to see that in their practice, that the individual is pleasant to live with. They're not going around attempting to stir up a commotion amongst other people. Then the fifth one here, this is one that you'll see the Buddha talking about, where this individual reveals their tricks, ploys, schemes, and ruses, essentially things that they're doing that are unwise, right? That they're willing to reveal that to the teacher so that the teacher can then help them to be able to understand how to overcome that through the cultivation of wisdom. But someone who tries to hide what it is that they're doing, this individual isn't truly making their way towards enlightenment. They're cultivating unwholesome qualities. But going to a teacher and explaining what it is that you've done that is unwise, now that individual can get the help that they need. So this is a quality that the Buddha is describing, that if you see someone that has this quality, they would be willing to, you might be willing to support that person. Then one who takes up the training and is determined, right? You need to see that dedication and determination. Either the person's already enlightened, or what the Buddha is talking about here is someone who's on their way to enlightenment, and certain qualities that this individual would have. That even if other people aren't training, even if other people aren't meditating, even if other people aren't reading books and contemplating the teachings and things like that, that this individual is willing to do that because they're determined. He talks about moving along this straight path. This is a practice of the Eightfold Path, that you would see someone deeply practicing the Eightfold Path, and that would be a person that you might be interested in supporting. And then lastly, there's this dedication and this diligence to be able to practice, that this individual has strength, effort, and energy to practice, and kind of this fortitude to see through their practice and continue to practice diligently and working their way towards enlightenment. That they would have enough energy that they say, even if these body was giving out, they would still apply effort and energy to be able to make their way to enlightenment. So these are 8 more qualities that the Buddha is talking about here. Let me know if you guys have questions about any of these. Okay, I don't see any questions there. So now we'll go to chapter 68, and it looks like Pat's going to read that one. Go ahead, sir. Looks like it's the Pat and Samantha show.
Persons who are worthy of gifts. 12th discourse. Monks. Possessing 8 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 8? 1. Here, a monk is virtuous, practicing moral conduct. He resides restrained by the training guidelines, possessed of wholesome conduct and wise decision-making, seeing danger in the slightest faults. Having undertaken the training guidelines, he trains in them. 2. He has learned much, remembers what he has learned, and accumulates what he has learned. Those teachings that are good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing which proclaim the perfectly complete and pure spiritual life. Such teachings are these he has learned much of, retained in mind, recited verbally, investigated with the mind, and penetrated well by view. 3. He has aroused energy. He is strong, firm in effort, and has not cast off the duty of cultivating wholesome qualities. 4. He is a forest dweller, one who resorts to remote lodgings. 5. He has vanquished discontentedness and excitement. He overcame discontentedness whenever it arose. 6. He has vanquished fear and terror. He overcame fear and terror whenever they arose. 7. He gains at will, without trouble or difficulty, the 4 jhanas that constitute the higher mind and are dwellings in peacefulness in this very life. 8. With the destruction of the taints, he has realized for himself with direct knowledge, experience in this very life, the taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, and having entered upon it, he resides in it. Possessing these 8 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, and unsurpassed field of merit for the world. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pat. So once again, we've got some more qualities here. This virtuous behavior, we've talked about that. This individual who understands the teachings, understands them very well, has remembered them, right? By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind, as I mentioned, has upgraded to this operating system, and you will deeply know those teachings, and you'll be able to explain them very easily. You'll never forget what it took for you to get to enlightenment. Because what the Buddha is talking about here is, once again, an enlightened being. So an individual who's gotten to enlightenment, they would have accumulated this wisdom, and they will be deeply practicing it. It'll be fresh in their mind, be able to share with anybody and everybody who's interested in learning that. And that would be the type of individual that you would potentially be interested in supporting. Then he's talking about arousing this energy to cultivate wholesome qualities, that this individual is a forest dweller. So this is an individual during the lifetime of the Buddha who would be willing to go out into the forest and live alone, right? That you would see that this person isn't needy and just always having to be around people, right? That an individual who's enlightened, they're completely comfortable to go on vacation by themselves, to travel by themselves, to go to the mall by themselves, to go eat dinner by themselves. Oftentimes people, when they do these kinds of things, they're dependent on others. They don't feel comfortable to go to the mall unless they have other people with them. They don't feel comfortable going on vacation unless they have someone else with them. They don't feel comfortable going to eat at a restaurant unless they have somebody else with them. They feel lonely and bored. They're not even comfortable in spending time with themselves. But for someone who's actually liberated the mind, they're completely content spending time with people, but also spending time away on their own as well. This individual who's vanquished discontentedness and excitement, remember, whenever you see that, the Buddha is talking about conditional excitement, that it's based on this condition that the mind will be excited, that by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is cheerful and bright and glad and uplifted at all times, but it's not conditional, meaning it's going up and down and up and down. It's not based on some condition. Like, oh my gosh, it's sunny outside, so I'm going to be excited. But then when it's raining, you'll be sad or frustrated. Or, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so excited because I'm going on this vacation. But then when you're at home, you're kind of bored and lonely and feeling mundane. That's conditional excitement. And if you allow your mind to get that, then you're going to experience the painful feelings later. But for someone who's been liberated, their mind is experiencing enlightenment. Their mind's not going up and down like that. It's just always cheerful and bright and uplifted. Likewise, this individual would have eliminated any kind of fear or any kind of painful feelings that are in the mind. But you won't see that in their mind either. You also notice that they will understand what the jhanas are because they will have been practicing and they actually trained their mind to experience the jhanas. And then they will understand what those are and be able to describe them. The jhanas are 4 preliminary phases that your mind goes through on the way to the first stage of enlightenment. Your mind is actually residing in these jhanas at all times. They're enhanced qualities of mind that are needed even to get to the first stage of enlightenment, let alone enlightenment itself. So an individual who's actually experiencing the 4 jhanas, they will experience these enhanced qualities of mind. And they will know what those are, and they will be able to explain what the jhanas are. And their mind will be dwelling in that. Oftentimes people think that you turn the jhanas on or off, and it's only in meditation that they're experiencing the jhanas. This isn't actually true. Your mind's actually experiencing those qualities at all times. And then ultimately, like we've talked about previously, the Buddha is describing this individual as having completely purified the mind, eliminated all the pollutions of mind. And that's what you would be looking for, someone who's not discontent, not even the slightest ickiness in the mind. So these are 8 more qualities that the Buddha is describing here that you could potentially look at. And you don't need to look at all of these discourses at one time and apply all of these discourses to someone at one time. But instead, you can just take one discourse and apply it if you like, and then take another one and apply that if you'd like. But there's multiple ways to kind of look at someone's practice to determine if their mind is either enlightened or very close to it, because that's what you'd ultimately like to be supporting if you're going to support someone who's sharing the teachings. Let me know if you guys have questions on this discourse. Okay, I don't see any questions. So I think we have one more that is this type of discourse, chapter 69. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Samantha.
There are a lot of worthy people. in these discourses.
Yeah.
Persons who are worthy of gifts, 13th discourse. So too monks possessing 5 qualities. A monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 5? He patiently endures forms, patiently endures sounds, patiently endures odors, patiently endures flavors, and patiently endures physical objects. And how is it that a monk patiently endures forms? Here, when a monk sees a form with the eye, he does not become captivated by a tempting form and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that a monk patiently endures forms. And how is it that a monk patiently endures sounds? Here, when a monk hears a sound with the ear, he does not become captivated by a tempting sound and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that the monk patiently endures sounds. And how is it that a monk patiently endures odors? Here, when a monk smells an odor with the nose, he does not become captivated by a tempting odor and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that a monk patiently endures odors. And how is it that a monk patiently endures flavors? Here, when a monk experiences a flavor with the tongue, he does not become captivated by a tempting flavor and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that a monk patiently endures flavors. And how is it that a monk patiently endures physical objects? Here, when a monk feels a physical object with the body, he does not become captivated by a tempting physical object and can concentrate his mind. It is in this way that a monk patiently endures physical objects. Possessing these 5 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world.
All right. Thank you, Samantha. So what the Buddha is talking about here is central desire and the 5 chords of central pleasure, that the mind will long and yearn when it has this central desire, and it'll be pulled in the direction of the objects of its affection, and it will lack concentration of mind. But for someone who patiently endures these things, their mind can be concentrated no matter what's going on around them. So this is qualities that you would like to look for. And he's talking about the 5 because it's the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and then the body itself. So if you're familiar with the sense bases and the 5 chords of central pleasure, that you would look for those types of things, where if somebody's lacking concentration and they can't gain their clarity of thought, and there's some music playing and their mind's not concentrated, or any of these other things that the Buddha is talking about that an individual would come in contact with, then you know that they're not practicing the teachings very closely, because they haven't trained their mind to the point of being able to overcome those things. So let me know what questions you guys have on this one. All right, I don't see any questions here. So now we'll go to the last one. I thought that was the last one, but I guess it's this one, the 14th one. Go ahead, Pat. Or actually, this is very similar to the last one.
You want me to read it, or?
Yeah, we can just read it, but I won't have anything to teach on this, but if you guys have questions, let me know.
Persons who are worthy of gifts, 14th discourse. So too, possessing 6 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, an unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What 6? Here, a monk patiently endures forms, patiently endures sounds, patiently endures odors, patiently endures flavors, patiently endures physical objects, and patiently endures mental objects. Possessing these 6 qualities, a monk is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, and unsurpassed fields of merit for the world.
All right. Thank you, Pat. There actually is one extra thing here that this discourse has that the other one didn't, which is the mental objects. The mental objects are those fetters that are in the mind, that the mind, as it's experiencing those, the mind can be patient about that and understanding that this is part of the process of being able to make their way to enlightenment, that you're going to experience these things, and that an individual wouldn't be, so bent out of shape about these things, but instead they would be patient and understanding that this is a work in progress to be able to train their mind to eliminate central desire. So let me know if you guys have questions on this one. Okay, we've got a whole class here with no questions. So that's kind of like what we would think, coming towards the end of this Pali Canon and English study group that you guys have been studying a lot now for practically a year and a half. We're going to be restarting this in 2026. We started this program back in 2024, if you can imagine. Back in June or July of 2024 is where we started, and we've now studied quite a bit. I've got one more class that I'm going to be teaching on the 3rd of January. I'll be teaching. It'll be the last class for the Pali Canon English Study Group. The next class, though, I'll be in India, so I won't be teaching that. But you can learn that through our YouTube channel, because I've taught it before, and you can just search for it. And I actually sent out an email and I sent out a Facebook post that will show you the class that I'm not going to be teaching next Saturday. But then the following Saturday after that, I will teach the very last Pali Canon English Study Group class. And then we're going to be restarting from the very beginning on the 10th of January. So you guys might decide that you would like to retake this again to be able to flesh out all the learning from the Pali Canon English Study Group, where we'll be starting from the very beginning of Volume 2. So thank you all for attending. Thank you for reading. Thank you for your interest to learn and practice. As you guys would like to learn more, you're always welcome to reach out and attend any of these classes. So whatever you guys decide to do, take care and be well. We'll see you next time. Sawadee ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.